Welcome to the Top 10 Gardner with Master Gardener Ken Lain. Gardening can be challenging, but with Ken's tips, tricks, and top 10 advice, you'll reap huge rewards. Now, welcome your garden host, Ken Lain.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Mountain Gardener, your host, Ken Lain, here every week, talking about the landscapes of northern Arizona. Oh gosh, finally, summer is, 3 weeks away. So it has been the absolute perfect spring for gardening. It's been ideal. My tomatoes are growing like a foot a week. It's wild. I can't keep them in the cages. They're growing so fast. I've got the first tomatoes forming. The flowers are over the top, extending, expanding. A couple things I'm doing right now in my gardens to keep that growth going. And so the potatoes this week, I plant my potatoes in 15-gallon tall buckets. And so I know it's weird. It's not in the ground, but I don't have very good soil. So I've got to go in containers. And so I love growing in black growers buckets because I just put the potatoes in the bottom as it grows. I just backfill with soil. And at the end of the year, I just dump the dirt out and all the potatoes go whoosh all over the place. It's just so easy, but you've got to keep up. The reason they plant potatoes, not tomatoes, potatoes on mounds is that as that vine grows up the potato, the more soil you can have touching that long stem, the more potatoes will come off that one vine. And so as that thing is growing, it is hard to keep up. They are growing so fast. And once it gets big and bushy, it's kind of you lost your opportunity. And so I just topped off at the very top of this, maybe it's 18 inches tall, black grower's bucket with potting soil. I'll just use potting soil. The regular old soil I grow flowers and tomato starts in, I put my potato seedlings in, and as it grows, I just backfill. And I'll have, 20 pounds, 30 pounds of potatoes. I mean, a lot. Like, oh my gosh, what do I do with all those? The same thing is going on with my tomatoes. So the tomato plants went in. I've got 3 of them. That's more than enough. I'm not going to can. I just want fresh, delicious slicing, eat them while I'm in the garden, just right there, melt in your mouth tomatoes. So I've got 4. I can't remember. So I've got a row of them, and they've gone from little tiny guys. I planted them real deep in the ground. Maybe they were 6 inches out of the ground 2 weeks ago. Now they are at least a foot and a half. They're knee high and growing fast. They're growing so fast. They're trying to grow underneath the rings of my tomato cages. You got to really keep up on this stuff because they can become so rigid, so fast, grow so quickly that you almost have to break the tops off to get them back underneath, to get them back under control. And so just a little bit of work each time. Here's the insider tip for you. Keep up with that. I've got my cages on already. I've got the cages staked because these are big. These are indeterminate tomatoes. That is, they're going to get as big as you and I. They're going to get tall, and they're going to produce pounds and pounds and pounds of tomatoes. It's going to be so exciting. Had my first 2 form, and my Brandywines and Celebrities and Champions, they're starting to set fruit. If yours are up to about a foot tall, maybe knee high and no more, the way you can get them to start to set fruit for you, you spritz the foliage with blossom set. And that's how I got mine to start fruiting. You just go out there. Okay, they're tall enough. You should be mature enough to start setting fruit. What's going on, guys or gals, whoever tomato is? And so I go out there, and it's a liquid. It's in a trigger sprayer. I go and I just spritz the foliage. And what blossom set does, it's not liquid pollen in a bottle. What it does is you spray the foliage, and it causes that plant to slow down and take a breath. And so it's got to remember what it is. It's a tomato plant, and I should stop just putting green foliage on. I should probably set a fruit now. And so it slows it down, lets it take a breath, and so it forces those flowers to start setting fruit. You really, really do want some fruit to start setting before we reach summer. You need some fruit to start, because once we get in that mid-90s, tomatoes, they don't like that. They want it to be in this 80s. They want it to be like right now, this late May, early June. This is the time for them. They're in heaven. And so I'm desperately trying, not desperately, I know I need to start getting them to set fruit. And so I'm spritzing my flowers once a week with blossom set until I start to see the first fruits form. And I'm starting to see that. So it's one of my tomatoes, I predict all of them next week will start to have little tiny fruits on. I've got different sizes. I like the medium size, celebrities, early girls, champions. I like that size. I also need one slicer. So I just love Brandywine, just something. It's an old fashioned heirloom tomato, forms tomatoes as big as your hand. They're just beautiful, juicy, melt in your mouth. My mouth's just watering thinking about them. So I've got one of those. I'll spritz once a week with Blossom Set. And this is one you don't want to go down to the box store and get the little tiny 8-ounce for $9.99. No, you want the big bottle, pay $3 more and get the big quart size because you're spritzing the entire foliage area. You don't even care about the flowers. You're focused on the foliage, and it will cause that plant will absorb it and then start to go, okay, I'm going to start to make these flowers set some fruit. And they do. And so that's how Blossom Set works. Once I start to see fruit on my plant, I switch it up. So then I'll go every other week with Blossom Set. So I'll hit it with Blossom Set once a week until I see fruit. I don't just do my tomatoes either. I'll do my squash, cucumbers benefit, eggplant benefits from this. Anything that's edible, kind of fruiting plants, vegetable plants are going to benefit from Blossom Set. So you hit it with that. Once I start to see tomatoes forming on my plants, I'll switch it up. And then every other week, I'll hit it with something every week. For 1 week, I'll hit it with Blossom Set. The next week, once I've got fruit on, I'll hit it with Yield Booster, Yield, yield, like yield to yellow flashing lights. Yield Booster. It's the same thing. It's a liquid. You're focused on the foliage, but we are notorious here for calcium blossom end rot. So where the fruit formed and the flower touched it, that part of the fruit rots and falls off. It's still it's a terrible looking thing. It's gross. So, and it happens with those first fruits a lot. It happens on squash. It'll start to form, turn yellow, fall off. These are all indications of calcium deficiencies. That's what causes blossom end rot. And so I'll tend to hit it 1 week with Blossom Set. Sorry about that. The next week with Yield Booster. And I just flip it back and forth throughout the growing season. And I have amazing production, and it's blemish free. So calcium prevents that blossom end rot. It also increases the size, the taste. So calcium is what brings out the flavors of vegetables. And so Yield Booster is a liquid form available to the plant right now through the foliage. So I go out usually in the morning. I'm admiring my garden-esque green thumbs. Oh, this feels pretty good. I'm going to have vegetables pretty quick. Spritz, spritz, spritz. And I just make them happy in the morning. The other one that I'm doing right now, because I know the temperature is going to go up. We're within 2-3 weeks, just before the monsoons at the end of this month, it's going to reach in the 90s, even at the highest elevations. It's going to get close, high 80s, early 90s. And so it'll be hot during the day and then it'll cool right down at night. But plants don't like that. And so I'm trying to keep my soil from being sunburned. So the soil can burn much like your skin. If you're on the lake all day and you haven't put sunblock on, you're going to feel it the next day. Well, your plants feel the same thing at the soil level. And so I don't want that soil to become burned. So I'm top dressing with a 2-3 inch layer of compost or shredded cedar bark. I like cedar bark because it's cedar, so it repels some insects. It's coarse, so it doesn't break down too fast, and it's good at keeping the sun off my soil. It prevents weeds, keeps the soil moist, and mainly it'll keep that soil from drying out and cracking. You'll see this parched lips only at the soil, right at the base of your plants. And so I'm actively spreading compost or shredded cedar bark, those two things, whatever broken bag I have at the garden center, that's kind of what I take home. That's what gets used because I've already bought them. Why not use them? And so I take them home and I spread them out and I make the plants happy. But I'm planning on The summer is going to come and I don't want my soils to be burned, and you don't either. And it's so easy with a 2 to 3 inch layer of organic material over that will keep your plants happy, happy, happy. We've got Lisa Lain coming in with your garden questions right after this.
Waters Garden companion plants for June are moonshine yarrow, silverberry, Hall's honeysuckle, and sunburst locust.
Sunburst locust cheerfully shouts, "Hello, spring," with its glowing yellow leaves.
As summer heats up, it settles down to a naturally cool green, only to turn gold again in the autumn.
This Waters exclusive casts a dappled shade, perfect for reading books or sharing an outdoor meal, and impervious to deer.
You'll find the coolest trees here at Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott. You're listening to Garden Master Ken Lain, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Join his daily podcast for timely garden advice seasonally right for the gardens. Ken can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott or through his website at top10gardener.com.